Everyone, good evening. Thank you so much for coming to join me. My name's Ed. Hopefully you were expecting me. I assume so, because this is lock the doors, Luke, please. Don't let them leave now. But yeah, my name's Ed. I'm here today to talk about how to become your app's security champion. I'm going to start with a very question, which is, what do me and a pony have in common today? The answer is we're both a little hoarse. Always start with a joke. No laughs. You could cut that out in editing. Unfortunately, I've got a bit of a cough, so please bear with me. I've been coughing all day. I'm hoping it won't affect me too much, but I'm hopefully not too contagious. But I do appreciate that you've all sat like a few rows back. As I said, I'm Ed. I am currently a mobile tech lead at Kraken. Kraken is not the rum company. It's not a crypto exchange. It is part of Octopus Energy Group. And my new role, I've been there 6 months. I'm leading a team working on the Octopus Energy app. If you have an engineer come to your house and install a heat pump or a solar panel or to fix your boiler, they're using an app, and that's what I'm working on. So that's really fun. As Luke mentioned, I'm an Android Google Dev expert, so I've been doing Android for like 13 years now. I'm also a Pomeranian dad. I like to show pictures of my dog, like any good dog owner does. That's him. I've made sure you know which one's which. And in my career, I've worked in a bunch of places. My previous role was at ASOS, the clothing company. As you can tell, I previously worked in fashion. I then worked at an agency before that, and before that, which feels like a millennium ago, I actually worked at a startup called Bopple. So I've done it all, but what you're really interested about is why I'm here tonight, and that's because I am a mobile security enthusiast. Note enthusiast, I'm not an expert, so please do your own research. But we're going to go talk through a few things in this slides. Hopefully it will make some sense. But I really love mobile security. That's why I'm really pleased to be talking about that today. I am an Android dev first, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Can I have a rough show of hands? I won't do any more audience participation after this, but if you're an Android dev, hands? More than one, that's fine. And the rest iOS? And the rest just here for the free food? Yeah, there are loads of hands for that, great. Yeah, cool, okay, well I am an Android dev first. My current role, I'm kind of using Kotlin multi-platform and Compose multi-platform. By the looks of the slides before, that was something you're all interested in, so maybe I should have talked about that, but by all means, grab me after and we can talk about that if you're interested in it. And I really love to blog and talk about things, and you can find all of my stuff on my website, spaghetti.dev. I go by Spaghetti Code online, so if you follow my advice and you follow it from somebody that calls themselves Spaghetti Code, well, it's on you, isn't it? So yeah, no, please check out my website after this. The slides and that will be on there when I get home, I guess. So what is coming up? I guess that's the important thing. Why are we all here? This talk is a funny one. It's going to cover kind of a bunch of topics. It's going to cover why mobile security is important, why I feel it's important. Hopefully you know why it's important, but just in case you don't, we'll go through that. And we're going to talk about how to begin a security champion program. And if you don't know what that is, good, because we're going to talk about that. And how to become a security champion yourself. So a few ideas of how to kind of get started in the security space if you haven't already, because it can be a bit scary. A few disclaimers. As always, this talk is not endorsed by my employer, be that past, present, and it's not endorsed by anyone else, actually, for that matter. But yeah, it's just to put that on the table. It's for educational purposes only. When we're talking about security, there's things you can do in the security space which can be for good and for bad. Please don't do anything for bad, please only do it for good. But in any case, what you do is nothing to do with me, and this was only for educational purposes. As I said, this is more of kind of a strategic talk, so it's kind of talking about mobile security more broadly, but if you want to get into meat and potatoes, I can definitely talk about that, and by all means add something to the Slido if you want to. And this talk will be available online. I actually gave this talk the first time 3 years ago, and I haven't really done it since, so it's going to be a surprise for me. So it's kind of a bit of slide roulette here. But let's start off with a question, which is, why should mobile developers care about security? Now, hopefully, have a little think, why should we care? I'm going to give you a few ideas, but hopefully we should know that we should all care. I think the first thing to note is that the mobile attack surface is massive, and it's growing, right? So Android most recently announced 3.6 billion active devices, which I think for context, it's something like 45% of the world's population, which is a lot, right? So there's, 45% of the world's population could have at least one Android device, which is crazy. And that figure doesn't really include the devices that are using alternative stores. So if you kind of think of your Huawei's, your devices that aren't going through the kind of Google ecosystem, that number might be even more. There's also a myriad of different devices running Android nowadays. So you have your different form factors, so your tablets, your Android TV, your cars. Android as an operating system is everywhere. So it's a really it's a growing space, and I'm not saying that you're going to do much by attacking someone's TV, but maybe, I don't know. And sorry, iOS people, there, I did see people's hands. You now have over 1 billion devices too, so go iOS people, well done. So yeah, basically with more and more active devices in use, it's a huge opportunity for malicious actors. So the attack space is humongous. The other reason we should care is that there's growing financial incentives. Now, a really good thing to kind of pinpoint for this is that there's been a real recent rise of things like Web 3.0 and crypto. It's not my bag, despite working at somewhere called Kraken. It's not my bag at all, but if it is, it's a dangerous place to be right now. If you are, if you're shipping stuff that's insecure, $2.2 billion worth of cryptocurrency was stolen last year, in 2024, which was a 20% increase year on year from the previous year. So yeah, that's crazy. I mean, the fun fact about this as well, when I was researching this, is actually, I think 60%, it's estimated 60% of that 2.2 billion was actually stolen by North Korean hackers. So good going them. They're doing really well. They must be, yeah, I'm not sure they'd be allowed to spend the money, but wow, they're doing a good job. So yeah, so obviously, with more kind of money in this space, there is obviously growing financial incentive. And this is bad because 70% of all fraud apparently occurs on mobile, which is a lot. 70% of all fraud, yeah, feels like a lot. So successful mobile exploits can garner huge financial results. So if you're a malicious actor, a cyber criminal, or apparently a North Korean, you're going to be, yeah, there's quite a lot of incentive for you to attack the mobile space right now. Another reason as mobile developers why we should care about mobile security is security incidents are very bad. My favorite quote about this is, it takes years to build a reputation and a few minutes of a cyber incident to ruin it. I wanted to find a really good example here, and when I came to these slides, all of the examples were from like 2019. So I found a more recent one, which is very handy because this was like last month. Who knows about the T-hack? Anyone knows about this? Yeah, a few people. You probably know more about it than I did because I completely missed this, by the way. Yeah, so if you don't know what the T-app was, it was a women-only dating safety mobile app, which if you don't know what that is, neither did I. Apparently, it was an application that was meant to be kind of like a women-only safe space where people could discuss their love interests or current partners, and the whole idea was to try and create kind of this safety net to make sure that you weren't dating a serial killer. Unfortunately, how they did this was by using facial analysis and photos of people's ID to ensure that only women were joining. And of course, with this type of app, people discussed a lot of sensitive subjects, their relationships, sexual activity, if they'd, infidelity, if they'd been unfaithful, etc. So this was a whole, this was always going to be a disaster, to be honest. And in July 2025, it was, hackers basically decompiled the app and then abused T's vibe-coded backend. So if you are vibe-coding your backend, I swiftly recommend you leave now and go home and address that. But basically what happened was personal information and 72,000 images were leaked on 4chan. And if you're going to leak anything anywhere, leaking it on 4chan, that's never a good time, is it? And followed up, the next month, with 1.1 million private messages also being leaked in another exploit. So the T-app, in case you're wondering kind of how they're doing, yeah, they've got 10 plus class action lawsuits ongoing at the moment, and I imagine, yeah, they're not going to come out very well from that. So yeah, a big reason why we want to care is because we don't want to end up like the T-app, right? Another reason we should care is security knowledge is neglected in our field. Now, I must admit, this is my personal opinion, so take that with a grain of salt, but certainly in my experience, security isn't a subject that a lot of developers know in depth. And that's primarily because of things such as like a perceived steep learning curve. With any subject, you can have a breadth of knowledge and a depth of knowledge. I feel like security is one of those where, the more further I dig deeper, the more I get confused. So I can imagine if you're coming at it from pretty much nothing, it can be very, very scary. However, what I like to do while I'm here tonight is to help show people that actually it's not a scary subject and kind of guide people into kind of finding out more about it. It's often misunderstood or just totally ignored. I've definitely worked at companies where security is only really a problem you think about until it's a problem, until it's too late, to be quite honest. And it's often misunderstood. There's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of Stack Overflow answers from 10 years ago that people are using as gospel now. And the security space changes quite a lot. So it's really good to keep up to date. It's really good to keep your eye on the ball. It's not overly sexy. It's not a sexy subject. I say that, but you've all turned out, and I've counted, Luke, there's 105 people here. Really? There's not, no. But it's not the most sexy subject. We want to get people more involved and more infused, and I'm hoping this talk today will do some of that. And the other thing that I think we always think about is a common "it won't happen to me" mentality. I've worked with a lot of people that think, "Oh, yeah, it's not going to happen to me," and that's what keeps me awake at night. That's why I've got the bags under my eyes, because I'm always worried about this. So it's really good to see that you're all here and care about mobile security. And the thing is, people do agree with this. People do agree that it's neglected. Admittedly, this poll didn't go quite how I wanted. I wanted people to say yes to security, the most neglected. There's no shame in second place. They said that accessibility was the most neglected aspect of mobile app development, and second was mobile security. So I tried to fudge the numbers, but unfortunately I couldn't. But no shame in second place. The solution. What is the solution to all of this? Well, we need mobile security champions, and that's why you're here tonight. And I imagine this is you right now. What the heck is a security champion anyway? Well, I'm so glad you asked. Security champions are non-security volunteers who act as liaisons in both directions, from security to their team and from their team to security. I really like that quote. That's a quote from Dustin. Dustin is a wonderful person who has written the Security Champion Success Guide, which a lot of these slides are based on. So by all means, please, I do plug him at the end, but please do follow Dustin and find out more about the Security Champion Success Guide online. But this is essentially what we're going to be talking about tonight, becoming a security champion, becoming the liaison between maybe your security team or the wider subject of mobile security and your own mobile team. So we'll talk about how to set that up and what that looks like in a bit. But surprise, you're already one. Hooray, you didn't know this, but you are already a security champion. You just didn't realize it, but not just yet. So let's talk about quickly the life cycle of a security champion and how we're going to become one. To start, you need to be someone interested in mobile security, and you can give yourself a big tick for that because you're already here. So you've done the first step. That was the hardest bit. The next bit is that you're looking to improve the security culture in your organization. Now, I'm jumping to conclusions a bit, but I'm also going to assume you want that as well. You're also here, so another big tick there. Hopefully, you're someone that's willing to learn or lead by example. Again, you're here to learn, hopefully. So hopefully that's another big tick. And hopefully you've got the skills to be able to kind of pass this knowledge on to others internally. And the good news is there's going to be a YouTube link, so it's going to be a case of just sending that over. So hopefully this is the start of your journey as a security champion. But what do we want to gain from being a security champion? The first thing we're going to want to gain is kind of knowledge of the key and relevant areas in mobile security. We're going to want to kind of end up writing with code with security in mind. We're going to want our team and our colleagues to follow security best practices. Have I pressed too much? Yes. We've seen all this, sorry. Boop, boop. I don't know why I didn't animate. Never mind. And what are our end goals? Our end goals are full leadership buy-in. Now, I'm going to caveat this and say that with kind of being a security champion and setting up a security champion program, this isn't necessary. You don't always need full leadership buy-in, but it's going to help a lot if you are, trying to infuse your organization to be more security-minded. It certainly helps if the higher-ups understand the problems you're facing and want to address it with you. In my experience, I've had kind of both full buy-in and partial buy-in and no buy-in. It's so much easier when people get it. But not necessary, but we certainly would love full leadership buy-in in the long term. We want non-security people performing security-related tasks. That's a lot of words. What does it mean? Your cybersecurity team are no longer, dictating everything. You're taking some ownership of your security tasks for yourself. And this is what our kind of end goal is by the end of the talk, is to understand how we can create a self-sufficient security champion program. A security champion program is essentially you can think of it as kind of like an initiative that you can bring to your team to be able to kind of bring security into the forefront of your organization, or in the forefront of your thinking when it comes to kind of app development. And this is really, something I'm really passionate about. And we'll talk a bit about my experience with that in a bit, but something that I'm really hoping you might be able to take away and use going forward. Which is all well and good, but how do we set a security champion program up? Let's talk about kind of our ideal world. So our ideal world is we have cybersec. Cybersec might be, depending on the size of your organization, it might be one person, it might be 100 people, it might be 1,000 people, I have no idea. But ideally, we want a cybersecurity expert or somebody to be able to kind of go to liaise with. You're also going to then find yourself in an organization with other teams. Now, chances are you are here. Now, is there anybody here from cybersecurity? Anyone? One. Oh, you should be giving the talk. Why am I? Fantastic. Well, I'm glad there's a few people. You're the green one, so you can ignore the you are here, but everyone else, the majority, are in the blue. And then in the middle, in between here, are your champions. Now, this is kind of what I want to emphasize. What is a champion? A champion is your interface between the cybersecurity world and the other teams. It might just be you. It might be a bunch of you. And the kind of point you want to get to is where these teams can kind of interact seamlessly via champions. So cybersecurity says, hey, we don't have a lot of mobile experience, but we know people that do, and they're interested in cybersecurity. So we're going to go through them to kind of, to do X, Y, and Z. And likewise, that kind of two-way flow of information. So this is kind of the whole idea of a security champion program. But maybe more realistically for your organization, it might look something more like this, where you have the scary world of mobile security, you in the middle, and then your mobile team or teams on the other side. But if that is you, don't be scared, because you now have the opportunity to become a true rock idol. Now, does anybody know what that is? Hands. Luke knows. Yes, clever people at the back. Yes, you, sir. It is the Rosetta Stone, or as I like to call it, Rosetta Chan. It's my favorite rock idol. So the Rosetta Stone, for those that people don't, this doesn't make sense, this slide, because it's not Japanese, it's Egyptian, so I don't know what I was thinking. I was ill over the weekend, all right? So this doesn't make any sense. But the Rosetta Stone was a stone found in ancient Egypt that was essentially used to translate between multiple different languages. It's how we're able to understand hieroglyphs now. Which is amazing. So essentially, you want to kind of model yourself on a Rosetta Stone, translating between mobile talk and security talk. So yeah, you can definitely become a Rosetta idol. Yeah, the more I look at that, the worse it gets. I'm going to change slides. So let's talk about how to set up. I think I've said this about 4 slides ago, but we haven't actually done it yet. How do we set up a champion program? I'm going to talk about kind of the key principles of how we would do that. The very first thing we need is a vision. Now, when we say vision, what does that mean? The vision is, where do we want to end up? What is the long-term goal of our program? That might be, releasing an app that is totally secure and everyone's happy. It might be just, putting something in place that's going to, bolster security incrementally. It might be just, what goals do we have? And to do that, you kind of need to know where you're starting from. The other thing when you're starting a champion program is work out who's going to participate in it. I think the most important thing to think about is kind of starting small and working big. We'll go through a few examples in a minute of certain programs and how they've panned out. But starting small, this might just be your mobile team and the cybersecurity team, or it might be you and your mobile team. You need to know who's going to be involved, who are we trying to reach, and kind of what people will be in part of this. So have a think about that. We also need to have kind of an environment or a setting and understand what the current environment of our business is. What are the current behaviours that the organisation is displaying? Are we already kind of, relatively security aware, or are we kind of, just setting ourselves up for disaster? Depending on kind of the size of your organisation or your team, this can vary, drastically. If you are working in a very small team, it might be that you're doing absolutely nothing with security. If you're working in a bigger organisation, you might have a security team that you're just not liaising with. This is, what you do really hinges on kind of the environment that you kind of find yourself in. So when you're setting up a champion program, you really need to think about, what sort of resources you have and where you're working. The other thing you're going to need is like a concept. How do you want participants to behave? So what does a champion program look like conceptually? Is it just going to be a regular meeting of people? Is it going to be something that is going to be gamified? We'll talk about that in a minute. Is it going to be something that's going to involve 10 people and only be visible to your team, or is it something that's going to go across teams, across mobile teams, across platforms? Like, what kind of are you trying to build here? And that's really up to you. I mean, I can give you a couple of ideas, but the concept's really down to you. Incentive. What's the incentive? Now, this is a fun one, right? Because it's all well and good saying, I want to set up a security program, but what's in it for you? I mean, for you, it might be the self-satisfaction that, your app's more secure, but for others, it might be, well, okay, am I going to get, an hour off at lunch to do this, or am I going to, am I going to get time off, or am I going to get paid extra for it, etc. Depending on the business you work at, people have different incentives, and you're going to need to kind of account for that when you're setting up a kind of security program. So work with your team to find out what incentivizes people. I highly doubt that if you work at a small organisation, telling people that they're going to get paid a lot more is going to be viable, but who knows? I don't know. You do need an incentive to make sure that people are engaged. Delivery. So how are we going to, once we've kind of got people, we've got an idea, we've got kind of an understanding of what a program might look like, and we've got some incentive to do it, the delivery is very much how will we work together to do it? What's it going to look like? What I would suggest is starting small and thinking about, starting maybe a lunch and learn, a brown bag session, maybe occasional tech talks, and then scaling up. If it's successful, taking it to other teams, involving other teams, having cross collaboration between teams, until you get to a point where, it's pretty self-sufficient. But what's really important is also the tuning step. This is the bit that I always forget, is how do you measure success? Is it just having less security incidents? Is it having less vulnerabilities in the app? Is it having higher, developer satisfaction scores? It can be one of many metrics, but you do need some form of measure of success to make sure you're doing the right thing. So, once you're kind of making tweaks, you can see the results. So, okay. Let's talk about how we would kick off a security champion program today. Maybe not today, because it's probably a bit late in the day and I don't think your colleagues will be too pleased about it, but tomorrow. How do we kick off a security program tomorrow? Well, the first thing to do, like I said, is find a handful of like-minded engineers or individuals, and then maybe start a regular lunch and learn or brown bag session. Lunch and learns are a little bit controversial. I personally quite like my lunch hour. So if somebody says you need to sit through lunch to listen to me talk about mobile security, even I would be like, maybe not. So not necessarily, the concept of a brown bag session, lunch and learn, is that you find some dedicated time where you can kind of give maybe a talk or invite people in and discuss kind of topics. It can be very much a bring stuff to the table and just have a general topic. Maybe you'll find, a really great blog post or talk. There's a really good website for that down the bottom. If you want to kind of discuss things, there's quite a lot of different things we can do here, but I'd really recommend doing that. The next thing I would do is make a lot of noise internally about what you're doing and why you're doing it. If you want buy-in from senior leadership, the one thing you're going to need is to be making noise about it and make sure the right people are seeing it. So please do make some noise internally about what you're doing. And then raise the profile of security tasks within your app. So once you've got to a point where you understand the security landscape of your app, if you've got, we'll go through some techniques to be able to kind of get some ideas of stuff to implement. But once you've got those, bump them up. If you run sprints or you run kind of, if you've got tasks that you need to achieve, maybe rising their priority. Security is a very important subject, and I'm hoping that it's not going to, you're going to be able to talk to a product manager and say, hey, the app can let people steal all our information. I think we need to bump that up. I think they're going to probably listen to you. So make sure you're raising the profile of security tasks within your app on your sprints. And then make sure you speak to your engineering manager and or CISO if you are in cybersecurity or have a cybersecurity team. You probably have a CISO, so make sure you speak to them. Let's talk about a success story. We love success stories. So I mentioned Dustin earlier. Dustin has done all of this. He did this at his company, Fivetran. Fivetran are a global data warehousing company, which 3 years after giving this talk, I still don't know what that means, but hopefully some of you do. But he launched a security program in this business in May of 2022. And he kind of started a program initially focusing on participation, training and awareness. So he really tried to round up as many people as possible, tried to bring them up to speed with kind of modern day security techniques, and make leadership aware of kind of the security implications of the code they were writing, what they were doing. And over time, he slowly started increasing emphasis on performing actions. So he didn't expect everybody to come to the table and be able to go away and implement kind of security features or to learn more or to take specific tasks. That was something that he trickled in over time, especially for the more enthusiastic engineers and people involved. He also implemented gamification, which I wish I'd got a screenshot of what he built, but he built essentially a platform where there was a leaderboard, and the more security tasks you completed, the more things you did for the security program he implemented, the more points you got. And there were points, there were prizes. I don't think there were Droidcon tickets, but maybe, I have no idea. And that was so successful, 10% of the entire company are now signed up, and that's over 100 people. And what I should note is when I say 10% of the entire company, that's not the entire tech team, that is the entire company. And this is the real beauty about a security champion program, is that it's not just down to mobile developers or tech teams to do security tasks. There's security tasks that can affect any role. For example, I just walked in earlier. Mira's not here, but I literally just walked in, which is probably a security issue. But that aside, everybody needs to be security mindset, and we just need to make sure that we thinking about that. Let's talk about epic fails. That's me. I have failed to implement a security champion program before. And the reason I failed was because I took on all the responsibility myself, which as somebody who's really passionate about mobile security, I was quite happy to do so. But the problem was I became an information silo. I didn't share domain knowledge especially effectively. And I missed some really great opportunities to upskill enthusiastic teammates. A security champion program would have been amazing and probably have upskilled a lot of really enthusiastic people I worked with. But what actually happened was when shit hit the fan, guess who was on holiday? Yeah, that was me. And kind of going through this experience and realizing that actually, getting people more enthused about mobile security within an organization would have actually made my holiday a lot better, prompted me to write this talk. So congrats on your new champion program, but now what? So, okay, you've got some people, you've got a venue, you've got an idea, you've got kind of understanding what success looks like, but now what? What do we do? What are we going to do? So here's a few quick ideas to kind of get you started. The very first thing to do is to run SAST on your app and discuss results. SAST is static application security testing, and what that does is it's kind of a method of vulnerability testing that analyzes the source code of your application to determine the security vulnerabilities that might cause the application to become compromised. There's a lot of stuff on the market to do this. I'm going to go through a few of them. MobSF is the one I always go to because it's free. It also works on iOS and Android. I'm going to go through that in a little bit more detail in a second, so I'm going to move on to AppSweep. AppSweep is a relatively new offering. That's from the people at GuardSquare. GuardSquare, if you know GuardSquare, they're a wonderful organization that do a lot in the mobile app space. They have a free and an enterprise solution for AppSweep. This integrates really nicely with your CI, integrates really nicely with other stuff that you've probably got in your tech stack as well. And this is a great way of kind of keeping continuous monitoring of your application's security vulnerabilities. There's also Veracode. Veracode is a bit more broad as a platform. If you work in kind of big org, like a big tech, you've probably heard of Veracode or you've probably used it. It's not my most favorite, but it's an option. It's an option, and I hope they've got better since I last used it, but they are an option. As are SonarQube. SonarQube and Veracode, again, kind of enterprise scale solutions. If you've kind of worked with big apps before, you might have touched upon these. They also provide SAST. Again, they're not kind of mobile specific like MobSF and AppSweep are, but still viable solutions. Sneak. Sneak's a really good one. I like Sneak. I use this a lot for checking vulnerabilities in my app's dependencies. They have got a free tier and a paid tier, and some really nice CI actions that allow you to be able to kind of monitor your dependency. So if you add a dependency to your app, you want to make sure that it is secure and not introducing any vulnerabilities, and I really like Sneak for that. But there's loads out there, so please do your research. There's a few there. Feel free to take a photo. I've seen a couple of people take a photo, but the slides will be up online, and you can just Google this, to be fair. I want to talk about MobSF, because if you are starting a champion security program, this is an amazing place to start. MobSF is an open source SaaS tool. It also does kind of dynamic analysis, which I'll talk about in a second. But you essentially input an APK or your app's binaries, and you kind of get a general score and overview of security concerns. This was a test app I wrote, so please don't take this as like for granted as my work. This was something I threw together to try and show some issues. So it gives you that kind of general score. It also gives a prioritized list of security issues. So if you need to kind of have a takeaway and you want to look at something, this is a really great place to start as well. Moving on to this, every time you upload, you kind of get an overview of the app you've uploaded. You can walk through the files, you can walk through the code, see exactly where the vulnerabilities are and how to address them. And you can also perform dynamic analysis on your application. That's a whole nother kettle of fish. I will be talking about that at DroidCon, so if you win one of the tickets, I'm not forcing you to come to my talk, but it'd be really great if you could. And actually that is a condition of winning, I've now been told, so you have to come to my talk. So once you've got some SAST results from maybe something like MobSF, the next steps is to take this to report to your team and management and scare them with your results. You want to scare them because you want to get them to basically realize that maybe everything isn't as good as it seems, and at that point you can then action the high priority issues. Believe it or not, I perform this sort of analysis on my applications all the time, and you'd be amazed how many times, thankfully, I've caught funny little things that we've added that might pose a risk. So making sure that you've kind of got this set up nicely is a really, really important way of making sure that you don't introduce any vulnerabilities. And another really good thing about doing this things like MobSF or using other tools is that you're able to then show measurable improvement in the long term, which will help with the buy-in from your leadership as well. If you can show that you're actively making a difference and you're doing something well, you're onto a winner, really. And yeah, like I say, you want to make sure that you're actively monitoring going forwards. And a lot of these tools, like I mentioned, are very CI and CD friendly. So yeah, definitely take some time to look into that. This one, the next thing you can do if you're looking for something to kind of discuss is ensure your ProGuard and R8 rules are strict enough. iOS devs, this doesn't make a lot of sense for you, but if you are using Android, this will. There's a really cool tool. When this was written, this was brand new, but this has been out for a little while now. And GuardSquare, who I mentioned earlier, they actually, GuardSquare I think was founded by the person that wrote ProGuard. So if you know what ProGuard is, you've probably heard of this. ProGuard is kind of the language we use to obfuscate applications, and they have a playground. So you can go through and edit your ProGuard or R8 rules by uploading an APK and being able to kind of see in real time what your rules are doing. And this is really powerful because if you've ever kind of decompiled an app, which we'll talk about in a second, you can really leave yourself vulnerable by not having correct ProGuard or obfuscation rules. And it's really it's quite an expensive operation to add these rules to your app, build an APK, decompile it, and then be able to see what's happened. So this is a really, really quick and easy method of making sure that what you're adding in your rules is effective and doing what you think it is. So, like I say, you can add kind of your APK or jar files and edit ProGuard rules and see in real time what they're affecting. Yes, so exactly. No app building needed. Once you've got an APK, you can drop it in and you can edit the rules, and it will all show you in real time what's happening there. So make sure that you use the playground to improve your rules. You can test for any unexpected behaviors, which is, again, something that can save you time in the long run instead of just recompiling the app over and over again. And it also allows you to explore the ProGuard documentation direct from it, which is really useful because it's big. There's a lot there. And as a result, kind of using ProGuard, et cetera, you get smaller, optimized, and more secure builds. But it is Android only, so sorry. The next thing, decompile your app and take a poke around. Again, this is unfortunately another Android kind of specific slide, but you can do this to some extent on iOS as well, although I'm not as familiar with it. So if you're an Android kind of engineer, this makes sense to you. Your APK file, which is your binary, is just a zip file with extra spice. You can rename your APK file to a zip, you can unzip it, and then you can get a load of funky files from your APK. So if we kind of reverse engineer your APK, you get something that looks like this. You get a whole bunch of DEX files. DEX files are the Dalvik executable files. They're kind of similar to class files if you're from a Java world, but they run on Android's JVM, and they contain Dalvik bytecode. But it is possible to convert those to its kind of original source code, although that is a lossy process. And to kind of get back to a point where you can understand this in a format that's kind of somewhat readable, you need a tool like JADX. There's a whole bunch of different tools I've used over the years. JADX is probably my favorite, but there's plenty of alternatives. And what this does is you can enter an APK file or an Android resource file or a class file or a DEX file or a Smalley file or whatever, and it will essentially translate that back to somewhat readable Java code. Unfortunately, it's Java, I'm sorry, but we have to, we can't escape it. And what that allows you to do is kind of see the decompiled files, the packages, the classes and methods, and a Java representation of your code. So once you've got an APK file, if you decompile it using JADX, anybody can do this, right? Anybody can pull an APK file off your phone and do this process. So this is really useful to see what you're actually leaking out there. So this is a really good and useful exercise to make sure that you're not leaking anything you shouldn't. I thought I had more on that. Apparently not. The next thing you can do is check out my talks. So this is a bit of a funny talk for me. I'm usually talking a little bit more meat and potatoes. I've got a whole bunch of blogs. If you're interested in mobile security and you're an iOS developer as well, the 2024 OWASP Mobile Top 10 is probably the first blog I would recommend reading. This is for Android as well, it's for both, but this is a highlight of kind of the top 10 threats to mobile, what that means, and how to address them. If you're an Android engineer, then I've written a bunch about encrypted shared preferences, which are the bane of my existence, because that's all anybody ever asks me about. I recently talked about certificate transparency as well, and I have a whole bunch of talks on YouTube as well. So please do, if you are really scraping the bottom of the barrel and don't know what to talk about at your security champion meetings, you can use some of my stuff for free. It's fine. But if you do one thing today, please visit securitychampionsuccessguide.org. This is Dustin's website that I mentioned. He does a much better job of explaining it than I do. And he's a really nice chap, and you should follow him on LinkedIn because he's great. And that's it. Thanks for having me. I didn't cough a lot, so that was great. I wish I could have been like this all day. But thank you so much for having me. It's my second time in Leeds, and I'm thrilled to see so many of you here today. So thank you for having me. Thank you.
Has anyone got any questions for Ed whilst he's still here?
Go ahead.
Thanks, that was great.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask, I feel like a lot of times when you're looking for mobile security resources, a lot like the ones you find on web sort of security.
Yeah.
Have you found the same thing? And are there any really good resources that you recommend?
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and that's kind of how I ended up getting into what I do now. I think for me it was trying to find the right people to talk to and the right resources, and that's something I'm still always battling against. I think the first place to always start with anything is the documentation, which is a bit boring. And in fairness to particularly Google, they've made their resources a lot more palatable, and making sure that you are finding the right places to ask the right questions. There's definitely a lot more information online, particularly surrounding like back-end development, because obviously, yeah, as you would imagine, there's a lot of risk there. But there are a lot of really influential people online, not including myself, but there's plenty of creators online and talks. I think it's just making sure you know what the keywords are. So once you kind of find the right keywords and you know what you're looking for, the door's really open. So if you're kind of looking for entry into that world, I will plug my website again because I have to. Start there. The OWASP Top 10 is a really good resource that allows you to kind of then scratch the surface and dig deeper wherever you find more kind of whatever takes your fancy, really. So yeah, it's definitely a problem, and I'm here to try and address it in some way. But thank you for asking. Hopefully, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Amazing, thank you. Hello.
It's not really a question, but more just sort of echoing what you were saying.
Yes.
Because I've been a pen tester for about 3 years now, been mobile testing for about a year. But all the tools you were recommending, all the sort of ways you explained it, is pretty much what I look for in pen testing. And I found a lot of the times when I am pen testing apps, you can tell when someone's gone through these steps already.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier for both us and them when we're explaining issues we might have identified, when they sort of know how we've gone about it or what we've found. So it's a really good talk to see that, like, people on the other side actually also looking at it the same way.
Amazing. No, that's great feedback. Thank you. I think, having gone through a couple of pen tests, and does everyone know what a pen test is, by the way? Penetration testing. So it's, usually you pay a company to take your application, decompile it, do essentially some of the steps that I've said now to check kind of the robustness of its security. Yeah, I mean, it's a really good way of finding out when you've done something wrong, for sure. I've had pen tests where I've been like, oh, actually, you know what, even I missed that. So yeah, they're really, really useful. But yeah, no, really pleased to hear that. Thank you. I think it's very important that, as mobile developers, we are kind of being proactive rather than reactive in the security space. When you're being reactive to security, it's almost too late at that point. So whatever we can do to try and be proactive is really, really important. So I hope there's a couple of bits here that you can all take away, and I'm going to be sticking around as long as I can last without coughing myself to an early night. Yeah, if you have any questions about any other things that I've not mentioned here, or you can ask right now. But yeah, no, thank you for that feedback. Really appreciate that. Go ahead.
Do you need to take any steps or get permission before you start decompiling apps? Are there any kind of legal issues that you could get into?
Yeah, please decompile your own apps, preferably. And if you're going to decompile other people's apps, yeah, maybe don't shout about it. As I said at the start, disclaimer, please do everything for good. And I would caveat that the majority of security pen testing you should be doing is if it should be on your own application, or unless you are a paid pen tester with a contract to pen test particular things. Wouldn't recommend going around diving into other people's code if they're not expecting you to. It can be a useful exercise, but don't do anything illegal. Great, solid advice there. Don't do anything illegal.
So as a follow-up, say if you work for a company and you were interested in starting this group and you wanted to just check, is your company's app at risk of being compiled? Would you need to kind of check with someone before you
I'd hope not. I'd hope that your mobile team own the mobile app, but I guess depending on the size of your business and the the hoops you have to jump through, maybe. It's never really been a problem for me. I think if you are being proactive and with the guise of I want to make our app more secure, I'd be very surprised if anyone's going, oh no, you shouldn't be doing that. And if that does happen to you, reach out because I'd be interested to hear about it. So. Yeah, I hope that that's the case. In any case, if you have a cybersecurity department at your place, it's always worth getting them involved and just letting them know what you're doing, just in case you do trigger some security incident accidentally. So yeah, it depends on where you work, but I'd be very surprised if people were saying, no, don't make the app more secure. So,
Thank you.
nice. Hello.
Hi, great talk, by the way, thank you.
Thank you.
Another question on decompilation
Mhm.
and obfuscation. So, what value and importance do you think that that kind of adds to the security in an app? Because if we kind of look at open source, for example, right, everything's in the clear, and there's some argument that that can actually help improve the security in an app because there's more opportunities for people to, contribute to, any deficiencies and any vulnerabilities in that app. And obviously, by obfuscating the app, we're trying to prevent any possible vulnerabilities from being found.
Yeah.
But does that also potentially lead to kind of like a feeling of false security that you're kind of covering up? You might be covering up vulnerabilities that are there, but without actually addressing the root cause of those vulnerabilities.
Absolutely, great question. So you've spoiled my upcoming talk for DroidCon, so you need to win that so you can come to that. I'm talking in DroidCon London this year about kind of going beyond obfuscation and the other kind of steps you can take. Now with security, the way I like to see it is that we kind of follow the Swiss cheese model. Now the Swiss cheese model, for those that don't know, well, we have to talk about Swiss cheese first. I always like talking about cheese, so this is good. But Swiss cheese is the cheese with the holes in, right? And the idea of kind of the Swiss cheese model when it comes to security is that, the more layers of cheese you have, the less easy it is to kind of poke your finger through all of the holes. And that analogy represents kind of, like a hacker being able to kind of access your system. The more cheese you have kind of in place, the less easy it is for you to, find a hole that goes right from one end to the other. That's a very bad analogy that I did there, but you get the gist, right? So obfuscation is a layer of cheese, right? It's obfuscation is a really powerful tool when it's done well, but it itself isn't going to solve all of your security vulnerabilities. If I have, enough time in the day, an obfuscated app can be reverse engineered, and I've done that. I mean, I've been sad enough to sit and try and reverse engineer something because I've been interested in it. Not illegal, by the way, not illegal. Not illegally, anyway. Because I'm interested in it, but yeah, as just a useful exercise. So yes, I would say that thinking that just obfuscating your app and it going in the wild is good enough is probably misguided. It, again, really depends on your app. If you're like an offline notes app, notes app might not be the best example. If you're an offline stopwatch app, for example, adding, you probably are going to have less security concerns than if you're, NatWest, right? So it really kind of depends on the context, but you're absolutely right in saying that obfuscation is not like the silver bullet that solves security. It is a tool in your toolbox. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that does.
Amazing. And
the other part was just around, we as developers, not thinking that gives us the security and, means that we don't actually have to address, other concerns that may exist within the app.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important to go through the steps to make sure you understand the security landscape of your application. So running SAST, for example, and being able to kind of see that, even though I've obfuscated my app, I am still sending all of my network security. I'm sending all of my network things unencrypted. I think that's very difficult to do nowadays, but I'm sure you've had plenty of times. I've had a quite well-known company on my phone before, a shopping app, not the one I worked at, I should caveat, where I've been debugging my own app and then started seeing unsecured network traffic on my device. So I'm like, where's that coming from? Oh my God. So yeah, it's you can definitely miss stuff, and obfuscation wouldn't catch something like that, for example. Thank you for your question. Any other questions? Yes, at the back.
Can you suggest any security architecture practices and principles to be considered at the start of the project?
At the start of a project, that's a great question because I've never done that. What a great question. At the start of the project, I think if I was starting a greenfield project today, the first thing I would be doing is setting up kind of regular CI to feed my builds into things like maybe MobSF, and depending if you're a big company or whatever, small company, maybe an enterprise solution like Sneak or AppSweep. And I think starting with security in mind is like, it's very difficult to bolt on these sort of things afterwards. The other equivalent thing I would say is like accessibility. Accessibility in the app space is always something that you do, unfortunately, traditionally at the end. And that is always really, really difficult. So by kind of taking, that first step, putting your best foot forward and, starting from day zero, thinking about security, implementing the tooling and taking the time to do it, you'll almost certainly reap the benefits as time goes on. It's no good releasing version 1 of your app and then, adding all the security tooling and realizing you've just shipped version 1, which is completely insecure. You'd much rather get to version 1 with that level of confidence, knowing what you've done is secure. So I think bare minimum, if I was starting a new app tomorrow, I would be making sure that I've got CI set up and I'm, putting my data into something that's going to be spitting out, security issues from day one, and then prioritizing those when they come up. So I'm not sure if that's a great answer to your question. More than happy to kind of talk about it in a minute. But yeah, hopefully that does answer your question. Any questions online, Luke?
No, everyone's been very brave.
Oh, that's fantastic. Fantastic. Any other questions in the room? Yes.
A basic question.
Sure.
So how would an attacker exploit the app after decompiling it? It's a very generic one, basic one. But is that like an access to the backend? That's again an access to the backend?
So that's how, yeah. So the access to the back end was ultimately the TApp's flaw. So what people did was I think my understanding is they reverse engineered the app. They found out, where the app was talking to, and then they kind of did some poking around and realized it was all insecure, and that was kind of the gateway to the later vulnerability. But if you decompile your app, you can see a whole bunch of stuff. If you're shipping with secrets, my talk at DrawCon last October was about how to kind of secure your app secrets, so things like your API keys, etc. If you are bundling that sort of stuff into your app, once you decompile it, you can see it. And if you're not doing obfuscation overly well, you can see business logic, you can see all sorts of stuff. So you've got to be very careful what you ship in your app, because as gentleman there said a second ago, essentially if you're not doing obfuscation, etc., you're essentially shipping open source code. You can just go and decompile it and see what's going on and see how your app works, and it's not difficult to kind of walk that backwards and understand kind of maybe how an app works and be able to kind of discover secrets. It is as simple as dragging an APK into JADX. So download JADX, get your apps file, drag it over, see what comes up. You might be surprised.
I was going to say on the back of that, the obfuscation is actually really key in protecting, what methods you're using for like jailbreak, root detection and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's normally my go-to is decompile the app, find out what root detection, what SSL pinning stuff they're using, finding code online that helps you bypass it and going from there. But if it's obfuscated, it makes it that little bit harder for you to even take that step, and a malicious hacker taking that step as well. So
Yeah.
it's a key part of the cycle for security for apps, I'd say.
Amazing, yeah, great. Hopefully that answers some of your question.
Yes, it is.
Amazing, thank you. Any other questions? Mine was, can you remind us of the pub?
It's coming up, but before we do
Oh, sorry.
we all give Ed a round of applause, please. Thank you.
Thank you.